maybe you have seen these shorts, maybe you haven't, but there's this account called Tiny Chef AI that has these hilarious little videos where there's like a little crew working on the food. And a lot of these have like over 1 million views. And I thought it would be a great idea to use AI agents to build a viral shorts generator project that created these type of videos. Actually, you could create any type of video you want as long as you have a really good prompt. So let's actually watch one of these videos and see what's going on here. And it is just these little miniature, like claymation, stop motion animation type folks. They're just working on different types of food. So here they're in a bag of chips, working on some flour, wrangling a cow. They're having some trouble with this cow, wrangling a chicken. And so I could see people getting just lost in these type of videos. Now, is it for everybody? Not everyone likes AI generated content. I get it. But some of the stuff is just artistic. It looks pretty cool and really neat. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to show you how I built one of these tools using, if you want all my code and all my resources, you can check the description below for all that. So here is the studio. And if I click that, this is not like the best performing app or anything. I had agents just work on this quickly. Like most of these video generation tools, what you can do is select a style and then go with that style. So I had this food style here. Let me actually make this bigger so you guys can see it. So I had this food style here, and then I would drop a prompt in this, and then you would give it like a title. So it's a food crew 3, whatever it is, and then go ahead and generate the video. You can select how many seconds you want it. And a neat thing about this app as well is I already had billing and stuff integrated with Clerk. So it's already ready to go if you wanted to monetize or make it a revenue generating thing. Of course, you would need to possibly add in a couple more features. This is a competitive space. There's a lot of folks competing in this space, but I break all that down in some of my other trainings and content. So here in the videos, what you would get is all the videos that you generated, and this little preview here was supposed to work, but I wasn't able to get the preview down. But what you could do is you could click view here, and basically it would bring up the video that got generated. So this was my attempt at creating that cheeseburger video. And what I did was I went into ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT to reverse engineer from the photo a really good prompt. This is what it came up with: a whimsical, hyper-realistic miniature construction scene of workers. Like, it just went in. And so giving that prompt over to my backend, this is the video we came up with, is about 5 seconds. And it's not bad. It's like we got the miniature guys here, right? We got them, they're working. We have an extra bun, which is unfortunate. It was like so close to being perfect, but we have an extra bun here. And overall, I'm pretty happy with this output. Like, it's an AI video, so we could probably get away with stitching a few of these together, and I don't think anyone would care. There's an extra bun here. So I did try another one. So this was, I think, the first attempt I had at this. And I took another photo and tried to reverse engineer this one. So the prompt was detailed as well. And here, I don't know if I nailed it. My artistic skills are not that great. So these guys are working on this steak, and I guess they're hosing the steak down because it's sizzling, but it's also on fire. So the physics are questionable at best. And let's look at this one here. And so this was sizzling food in a pan. Great. But you can see how like just changing the prompt and changing the like art direction makes a whole different short. So in theory, if you were good enough at getting the prompt down, you could get some really good shorts out of this, and then download the shorts and really like just stitch them together to see if they work. Now, this is something you would have to extend once if you got your hands on the code and you work through it. I wouldn't just like deploy this right away. It's sitting on a Vercel app here. If you try to sign up for this, you probably won't get in. This is going to be on a wait list, so I'm not going to let people just run awry with my AI credits. Okay, so let's get into like how I built this. I have a whole, let me zoom out here. I can show you the entire picture. So I have a whole breakdown on how I built this. Something new that I've been introducing into my workflow is linear agents. And Linear released these integrations with different agent providers. There's Chat PRD, CodeGen, and a couple of others. Devin is included as well. And what this allows you to do is these agents are built in a way that they communicate with Linear's backend pretty seamlessly. And if you haven't used Linear before, it's basically a project management tool. If you're in the cursor space, you've probably heard of things like Taskmaster, which works like locally on your computer or within your IDE. Linear was built for professional developer teams, but you can use it. Anyone can use it. You just have to sign up. It's a couple bucks a month. And it's really well built for big projects, like long projects that you want to do over multiple time horizons. So not like a one-off weekend project, but something that's more complex, that's going to require a lot more interactions. So it's really perfect to get agents in there because in Linear, you can treat the agents as if they're just another developer. So you can literally just assign them to a task. Now, I could talk about this all day. So you know what's better? Let me just jump in and show you what I did actually. Here are a couple of tasks I had to do in this project. And what I would do is actually assign some agent to it. And I was using CodeGen here, but you could use any agent that works for you. So I like CodeGen. I like their integrations. I like their flow of their app. So it's a really good shout out to them. And before we jump into one of these, let's look at what we get here on the side. We get a little PR icon like this, and we get a little preview icon. And then this is the CodeGen agent that got assigned to it. And you can see the date and the cycle that it's assigned to. When this little red version of the PR shows up here, that's because that PR request got closed. So this is something that I tried to do, or I let the agent work on it, and it actually failed. So I just closed the PR request and probably retried it some other way. Now, not all of the PRs for this project I did through Linear and CodeGen. Some of them I kicked them off via Slack so that they don't show up in here. But I did try this for a couple of different PRs. And so the first one was like, just create this landing page for the faceless shorts generator. And you can see here that I actually had CodeGen write the tickets for this. So it writes it pretty well. It like outlines the requirements, the actual technical approach, and then it goes into the components that it wants to build. So here you can see it wrote a little bit of code. It's about 100 lines of code. And this is just like a React component for the landing page. And so this is pretty good because most times when you're working with an agent, the more instructions you give it, the more context you give it, the better it will perform. If I had just told it, hey, build me a landing page, maybe it would have came out with something decent. But this had all the things I wanted in terms of integrations and how it should be structured, all down to a T. And so you can see here, the reason why Linear is such a good little interface for this is not because I want to sit in front of this and watch it code. I want to be able to return back to this task and like pick up from where it left off. Some of these, I kicked off the CodeGen agent and then didn't come back to it for like hours on end. And so I would forget what happened. And this was really good to see a history of the different things that had occurred while I was away. And so it does give a little summary here. You can see that it breaks down exactly what happened and you can react to it. You can also view its work. You can also view the PR on GitHub. And so I basically worked with this back and forth, and I would often ask it to, hey, can you pass lit and build? Because if it didn't pass lit and build, it would break and not deploy. And so here we get, okay, I'll check on the lit and build status. It went ahead and fixed that. And then I asked it to improve the color theme. So just a lot of back and forth with an agent, but it's very similar to how you would do back and forth with someone. Maybe you onboarded to your team or another developer who might be working on this. It's not very different. It almost feels like you're collaborating with another person on this little mini project. Now, could I go in there and maybe have done this myself? Probably. Maybe it took me a minute or two. But if you think about the amount of these little minute or two tasks that I had to do throughout this project, then this saved me a ton. And I was doing other things. I wasn't only just working on this project throughout this entire time. So I basically went back and forth with this agent until we closed the task itself. Another thing I want to call out here with these CodeGen agents or agents in general inside of Linear is this little magnifying glass, which I like here. Because I was deploying with Vercel, Vercel gives you preview environments. I don't know what magic they've done here on the back end, but this just works. I can click a little preview button so you can see how much progress was done over time. I actually had a really bad layout. So the agents took it from this to what today, if we go back to what we have today to this, the agents worked on this. They did all the backend stuff and did all that work. So let's go back here. So this was how it was, bare bones. You can see the landing page and how it looked when the agent worked through this. Overall, I really like this workflow. Now, when it came to this task here, which was integrating fall.ai with Clean V2, if you know about those things, this one did require a little bit of work on my behalf. I didn't assign this to the agent outright. This was a little bit more tricky to get in place. I did drop into Cursor to do this, but CodeGen actually scoped the issue for me, and then I took this description here that it wrote up, and then I just plopped that into Cursor and then had Cursor kind of work on it while I supervise. But that was probably the most complex out of all the work that had to get done, and I can do API integrations, no sweat, and now it's even easier when all this stuff is documented. I really like this linear integration with agents. This brings it to another level because now you're not like in your IDE trying to manage a bunch of tasks in a markdown file. We have an actual system that was built for software development that you can manage your agents instead of trying to wrangle them in these weird MCP server like workflows. What I don't have anything against, it's just MCP servers are flaky. Okay, if we look at like my actual usage, because I think that's important. I like that CodeGen gives me these stats here. So actual usage over time. You can see here that most days I'm spinning up between 2 and 10 agents, I would say. I never went past that. But one day I like had time and I was like, let me just try to see how many of these things I can get going and start working on. And I was kicking off all types of tasks. And so I got up to around, maybe that's 30 agents in one day, just working simultaneously on my project. And I'm not like some super genius coder or anything like that. I'm just probably average skill and average at agents. I can only imagine people who are really dialed into this, how many agents they're spinning up on a day-to-day basis to get work done. Probably the Cursor guys who are working have hundreds of agents at a time working on things. It's absolutely insane. So this is when my productivity went through the roof and a lot of work on this project got done. And so here's like the view you get when you're just merging things in via the agent and they're working on stuff. That's a pretty good view in CodeGen. Here's another chart that I found pretty interesting. And so there was 14 merged pull requests. So over the entire project, there was only 14 PRs that happened, which is actually pretty low in my opinion. I would usually have more PRs, but because the agents were working on such long time horizons, they made a lot of edits. The PRs kind of got big. But overall, the interesting thing here is that this little CodeGen icon is the agents. The CodeGen agents outcoded me on the project. So this is my little icon, basically outcoded me. And this was the first time in one of these projects where it was so clear that this had happened and it's like really documented. And most of it was just adding code, not a lot of deletions, which means the code was well structured. If you have code where there's a lot of deletions, a lot of additions, like it's unbalanced, your code is not structured. If you can just add, the code's structured, that's good design. And so overall, the agents had a good baseline to start with, and they were able to continue working without me having to always intervene. Maybe I had to fix a little bug or a typo here, but I felt on this project that they did most of the work, so I have to give credit there. Okay, what was the actual process I took for the project? So agents did a lot of the work, but there was definitely, I had to think, like I couldn't just let them do everything. So I did start with V0 and Replit. I started with a pretty decent prompt, and I can go into that prompt here. And so here was the prompt. I had AI generate this prompt too. I kind of went back and forth with a couple of templates I had. And so here was the prompt. It started with, make this bigger. It started with the idea of making a clickable prototype. So whenever I'm like working with some of these mock-up and prototyping tools, I don't want to create something that's going to have a really extensive backend because it's just going to get too complicated and really hard to troubleshoot inside of those tools. I want to start with something that's just a clickable prototype to validate my idea. Then I can move on to actually building out the thing. And I'm going to include this in the description. You can grab this prompt and even build your own version of this if you want. And so I asked it to, hey, create a clickable prototype for Viral Shorts Generator. Great name. And it be an AI powered YouTube Shorts creation platform. So that's the kind of title there. And the sections I give it, I see people obsess over all these sections. I think the one thing you want to do is just be clear in what you want generated, and that's outlining how it would present itself. So I have pages in user flow here. I think user flow is really good to document. I see some tools like Tempo Labs includes user flow as well, and I've seen that in other tools. So user flow is a good one. And then just highlighting the different pages we want and how to navigate between them. So we have a landing page here, the different sections we want in a landing page, the type of copy we want inside of the landing page, the auth pages as well. And since the template I was using already integrated with Clerk, this was going to be easy. The dashboard layout. And so this is what gives a lot of consistency to the prompt, is because I'm calling out the layouts that I want. And because it's using React on the back end, the layouts are going to fall into place as needed. Okay, so we have a top navigation here, which is great. Then we have the studio page. So you've seen the studio page yourself. And I call out exactly the different sections I want inside of the studio page as well. I'm not doing any design here, so there is room for improvement on this prompt here, but I'm just calling out what I want in terms of how it's going to feel, not more how it's going to look. And so here's the video library that we want as well. So they have the studio, then you have your videos library, and then I call out some action buttons that I want. So we already went through being able to view and download the actual video itself. And you can see as we're reading this, some of these things didn't happen because I didn't take it as far, or maybe it just got ignored in the prompt, but we still get the structure. Okay, then we have our pricing page. I'm going to skip that. And then design requirements. And so here is where I went into the actual design. First, we covered the layouts, the structure of the app. Then we get into our design requirements. And I find that for Cursor or any agents, you want to call out your design requirements or they're just going to do really bad design. That being said, things like V0 just came out with a really cool model that does like Shad CN components and React components. So that will be pretty cool. But overall, design requirements, color scheme has to be like dialed in. Even adding like a keyword here, follow color theory, is really good because it tends to do like white on white text. Okay, and so key interactive elements, hover states, loading states, things like that. We saw a couple of inconsistencies when I was doing my demo. Of course, specific UI components needed. So one thing I didn't think it was going to get was the video player. So the video player is not bad that we were able to get that generated. Again, I didn't really code any of these features. I kind of just let the AI spin on a lot of the stuff. File upload was handled by Convex. A lot of the backend stuff was handled by Convex. Okay, and then mock data and content. Whenever you're working with V0 and Replit, you're just going to be better off doing mock data and content to start. Then you can maybe try to do some of the backend stuff, but it usually doesn't work. That's just what I found. Okay, and then a couple of key interactions and technical notes. So I took this, and the first one I put it into was V0. So I'll go to V0 and show you what it generated here. So this was the layout that it created in V0. Not bad. This is decent. If I was not technical and I just wanted to generate something and hand it off to a developer to finish or tie up the backend, I think this would be enough to give to someone. You can also see here that it creates a fake interface of like videos. We don't actually have any videos here to play, but that's okay because I can tell how the app would work anyways. And so if you take a look at the code here, I think it's good to always take a look at the code that's getting generated so you can understand how it works. And it basically has these actions. So I know that's how Next.js works under the hood with server-side actions. And we have our dashboard here. We have our different UI components and then our context as well, and a couple of hooks. So overall, I mean, from early days when this stuff was spitting out code to now, it's pretty clean. I feel like I would write this code if I was sitting down and actually writing out this app. This is code I could see being very well moved into production if we needed to move it into production. And of course, there'd be some bugs here and there, but you can always clean that stuff up. And my conversation when I went back and forth with this wasn't long. It was a very quick conversation. I basically pasted in, you can see here, I just pasted in the prompt. And then I think I maybe went back and forth one time around Cling, getting that API integrated, and then making sure the database stuff was hooked up. So for the database related stuff and the API integration, you can see that up here. And they've recently added this, or maybe I don't know how new this is, but this was new to me when I first went in here. So you can basically connect a lot of different services. Neon is basically the same thing as Supabase. They're competitors. And so I like Neon a lot better. It's just lower maintenance. You don't have to do a lot of logging in and logging out. Fall AI is Replicate if you've used it. This is very similar to just OpenAI. It's an API for AI. So you can really get into using all the different models across providers. For this project specifically, I used Kling, and that went pretty well. And then there's Blob, which is like fast storage, object storage here. This is like S3, but for Vercel. And there's a couple of other things I could have used. I just decided not to use them here. And of course, environment variables were managed for me. So that's a nice thing about V0 is like you get a lot of out of the box things just managed for you. You don't have to worry about going through each of these things. So if you want this prompt, I'm going to make this available. Just go in the description. You're going to be able to grab this from the community. You can grab this prompt here and then maybe build your own prototype and take it from there if you want to. Okay, so the other tool I threw this into was Replit. And so we can see here in Replit, very similar app that got spit out because they're somewhat using the same underlying frameworks, and it's just React code at the end of the day. So there's only so many ways you can do something. But because my prompt is very well structured, I was able to get a consistent output. If you take my prompt, you're probably going to be able to get a very similar looking app that I had. Then it's kind of up to you to get the back end working. All right, and so here's the dashboard. I think the V0 one is slightly more, I don't know, professional, sleek. I don't know what the word is, but it's just a little bit more professional, a little bit more sleek. Just looks a little bit more cartoony to me. Here's the studio, so you can put in a prompt, and then you can choose like a style to put in. So comedy would be a visual style, which is odd. We don't really have audio generation here. And you can choose the different aspect ratio. So this one has a couple more options available. Oh, this option didn't even generate. So this one has a little bit more of a customizing feel to it. Like you can customize more. But again, it's just a studio page. So we have all the required components we need. And then in my videos, you can see here that it actually did nail the management of these videos. And so I did try to do a slow-mo, a drone shot of Paris, but that didn't work here. This is just stuck in processing mode. Let's actually just delete it. See if that works. Probably have to refresh. Okay, that actually works. So some CRUD functionality worked here and there. And here is the same thing. I added the prompt at the start. I told it to use a Postgres database and blob storage for the video management system, just giving Replit a little bit of a hint. I'm not trying to do zero-shot apps all the time. I didn't have it do any extra planning or anything like that, so let it just kind of work through the basics first, and then it went ahead and started working on the app. And don't try to steal my API key, that's already dead, so you don't have to worry about that. And overall, even if I added in the fall API key, I gave it like, I think one more shot at trying to get the integration right, still didn't work. It wasn't able to build out the backend. So overall, with V0 and Replit, Lovable, all those tools are going to be really good for this part of the building, which is like getting the front end situated, maybe nailing the experience a little bit. But once you start thinking about your back end, you're just going to want to drop into GitHub, Cursor, Windsurf, one of those tools just to flesh out the back end, because life's going to be easier. It's easier to troubleshoot. So with V0 and Replit, what we were able to do is get a good clickable prototype, something we could touch, feel, maybe even share with other people. If this was like a app for the team, you could share it with the team. If this was an app you wanted to validate with some customers, maybe pre-sell it, you could do that. In this case, this was just something I wanted to build for this idea to generate these funny videos. So I am okay with moving on to the next step, which is building out the more robust solution for this, something that I could possibly extend for a longer period of time, maybe even turn into a product if I wanted to. And so this is the base setup now I have for projects where the entire intention is to have AI agents do a lot of coding on the project. What I found is, in general, the more that these tools are typed and also have good SDKs, good documentation, updated, that the agents tend to just perform really well in terms of coding it on its own without much interruption from me. So this entire architecture here that I have set up it's basically simple for MVPs and POCs. I think a lot of people are searching for the perfect way to do these MVPs and POCs with agents. I certainly don't want to impose like my specific way of doing it on you. This is just what works for me. Everyone's going to have a different flavor of this. And so what I found is Vercel, Convex, and Clerk, all of these guys, their developer teams are thinking about this. They're thinking about how do we build this in a way that AI can easily read our libraries and our SDKs. And they all have an AI chatbot available for their libraries as well. So it really lowers the learning curve if you're non-technical, if you're coming into this, or maybe if you're someone who hasn't done web development in years and you're trying to come into this. And I'll highlight some of the benefits of each of these tools. Vercel front-end development, hands down, probably one of the best developer experiences. I don't think anyone's going to argue with me on that one for the front end. But it doesn't really handle everything you need. So there's a couple of missing components. We're going to need a backend. We're going to need a database. And when I say backend, I mean something that can actually run functions in a way that is easily trackable and we can log stuff out. We're also going to need a database. And the problem with most databases these days, they're either SQL or NoSQL, but they require a ton of maintenance. Like a database is not a trivial thing to add to your app, although it can seem pretty trivial when you're just like clicking a few buttons in Supabase. Then we want to have Clerk do our auth and our billing for us. So Clerk has come out with a nice billing integration with Stripe. They work with the Stripe team, so this is why I'm really confident that this integration is going to be well done over time. It's in beta right now, so it's not that great, but it does handle a lot for you. And here are a couple of points about this little mini architecture I have. It's just super simple to deploy for MVPs and POCs. Everything is typed. So all these guys have a really good SDK. Agents can easily guess what the next token is and really write good this code, but it's also verifiable. We're avoiding reinventing the wheel for state management. If you keep Vercel in its place and React just client side, Convex can handle a lot of your state management. And it's really understated how hard state management can get, especially when your app starts to get a little bit more complex. Not for you if you're like a seasoned developer, you probably can figure it out, but for the agents, they get really confused. They start messing up the code. It starts writing a lot of spaghetti code. With the way Convex is set up, and because it's typed and it's generating API servers and it's generating schemas, it really controls the agents on the backend. I haven't seen any other backend as a service tool work this well with agents. If you're finding something better, let me know, but this is one of the best ones I found. And this is not sponsored by them. They just made a really good tool. Okay, and so with Clerk as well, Clerk has a decent SDK, but they also have just really simple components that you can use for the front end for sign in, sign out, pricing table, all that stuff is handled. So this is why I like this little stack here for MVPs and POCs. It's just the speed. You can get up and running pretty quickly and you don't have to write a lot of code, or in this case, the agents don't have to write a lot of code. Okay, so if we zoom out here, you can see that's pretty much it. We run into v0 replit. This is probably the most synchronous part of the project, and then making sure you have a nice base architecture for the agents to work on as they move forward. Overall, I really liked this stack. I think this project was a really good overview of how this stuff works if you are using it day to day. I can only imagine like really big engineering teams who are like bought in on agents, how many agents they're running a day. So if I'm running up to 30 in a day with like when I have free time, I can only imagine someone who's like really dialed in running these agents. So overall, I think this is pretty much going to be the future of how people are building these apps. It's definitely how I'm going to be building apps from now on, which is mostly using these background coding agents to do stuff. And if you want this project, you want to get all this information, just check the description below. I'll have places where you can grab the repo, you can grab the prompts, you can grab all those things so you can get started on this project. If you want to maybe build your own viral shorts generator, make your own little YouTube shorts channel, or even monetize this app, all that information will be available for you below in the description.